What is up, everybody? The MMA fighting crew is here in gorgeous Edmonton, as you can see. Take the time to soak in the sights before we start yapping, because we're going to talk. We got a lot to talk about. We got a big card this weekend.
A lot of fist fighting.
A lot of fist fighting. UFC 240. Alexander K. Lee here, the bad boy of MMA fighting, as I've been called by some.
The man with the scar.
The man with the scar. What? Can't notice.
And a few other nicknames we can't say on
Anyway, yeah. And here with handsome José Youngs to preview this weekend's card at Rogers Place, not Rogers Arena, not Rogers Center, Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta. José, how are you doing? Have you enjoyed this week so far?
It's been weird. I've learned a lot about Canada I didn't know existed. I didn't know you guys pronounce Z wrong. I didn't know how to pronounce bathrooms wrong. I didn't know you put U's in the word color. So pretty much I just learned that Canada's a bunch of incorrect people.
José's from Arizona, and that's it. That's all I'm going to say. You guys can draw your own conclusions from there.
I'm from New England, son.
Okay, I'm sorry. He lives in Arizona, and nothing against the good people of Arizona, and he's certainly not representative of them.
No.
So, with that out of the way, let's talk about the card, okay?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we've got a main card this weekend with two headlining bouts that are both rife with storylines, star power. At the top, we've got featherweight champion Max Holloway defending against Frankie Edgar. He's coming off that loss to Dustin Poirier for the interim lightweight title. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back. There's other things to consider. What's your favorite storyline, José, from the main event?
From the main event, I think this is the third time's the charm. I think that's what Frankie Edgar said at the open workout Q&A. They were supposed to fight at UFC 218 in Detroit before Frankie Edgar fell out, and Max Holloway famously beat José Aldo again via TKO. And then there was rebooked for UFC 222 in March, I think, of the next year in Las Vegas before Max Holloway fell out, and Frankie Edgar decided to stay on the card, and he fought Brian Ortega, and he got knocked out. After that, Brian Ortega eventually fought Max Holloway, and we saw how that ended up. Max Holloway kind of beat the brakes off of him. So third time's the charm. Frank Edgar says we're here. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of these really hyped fights that I've been really excited for fall out. And I thought this was going to be one of those that we might never see, but I'm really happy that we get to see arguably the greatest featherweight in Max Holloway. He won't call himself that, but a lot of people do. And then Frankie Edgar, who is a surefire future UFC Hall of Famer.
Now, it's funny you mentioned both legacy and third time's the charm, because not only is this the third time this particular matchup isn't booked, this is also Frankie's third shot at the featherweight title. He's a former lightweight champion, as I think most people know. When he dropped down to featherweight, he immediately got a shot at José Aldo. He lost the decision. Later, he challenged Aldo for the interim featherweight title. He lost again, and we didn't know if he was ever going to get a title shot again. He kept on winning. Circumstances fell into place, like you said. A little bit of bad luck, not getting the matchup initially with Max and getting delayed, but here we are. He's getting the fight now. Where do you think this does for Frankie's pound-for-pound legacy if he actually does manage to capture a title, become the 8th fighter to capture 2 UFC titles?
Well, in terms of his placing in pound-for-pound, I think it would really depend on how he wins. If he goes out there and does a classic Frankie, like, fight of the year, like we've seen against the Gray Maynards, even his 2 fights against José Aldo I thought were really good, but obviously everyone points at those 2 back-to-back, the second and third Gray Maynard fights. If he has another classic fight like that and comes out on top, and they do the rematch, Frankie himself said that if I beat Max Holloway, Max is one of those fighters that deserves a rematch, and he beats Max again, then we have a whole nother conversation. But he just goes out there and just, Conor McGregor starches Max Holloway like Conor McGregor did to José Aldo, and he beats him in like 12 seconds, then that's a whole nother conversation. So if Frankie does win, it obviously boosts him huge up the rankings, but I want to see how he does it, if he does it.
He needs to stop promising rematches. He rematched Benson Henderson, he fought BJ 3 times, Gray Maynard he fought 3 times. I know he's a very fair guy, and certainly Max would be deserving, but I don't know. I mean, we had a guy here this week, Alexander Volkanovski, waiting in the wings. For people who don't know, he made a 37-hour trip. He had to make 145 pounds to be eligible as a potential replacement for this weekend's main event. Thankfully, both guys, Max made it, Frankie made it, but Volkanovski put in the work.
Volkan actually came in under 145.
He did, half a pound under.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he really put in the work. And just looking at his record, I think he's 20-1 overall. He's unbeaten in the UFC. He just beat José Aldo in convincing fashion. And even though he had like a blood clot in his leg or blood issue in his leg after, he was ready to fight this weekend, which is pretty crazy and makes you wonder, should he have been the one getting the title shot? But do you think it would be a little unfair if they did an automatic rematch should Frankie, upset Max on Saturday?
It really does. I think it really depends on how the fight plays out, because we're also talking like all of these, will Frankie rematch Max? He has to do the one thing before that can even happen, and that's beat Max Holloway, which no one at featherweight has been able to do since Conor McGregor. So before we can talk rematch, Frankie A has to win first, and B, if he does win, I want to see how he wins, because like I said, if he just goes out there and crushes Max Holloway like he did to Chad Mendes, then I don't think an immediate rematch is probably in the books, especially with Volkanovski right there with that big Australia card coming up. They're going to want Volkanovski on that card, and why wouldn't they put him in a title fight? But if it's like a back and forth war, for all we know, they could both get 6-month suspensions. I mean, we saw Kamaru Usman. He beat Tyron Woodley. In March. He still hasn't fought. He had knee surgery. So this talk of rematch is fun, but Frankie has to beat Max first, which is one of the hardest tasks in the featherweight division, and we have to see how healthy these guys comes out.
And I think we can agree, though, a Holloway win, and should he be healthy, anything other than a Volkanovski title shot 100%. Would be an atrocity.
Unless Conor McGregor decides to cut back down to 145, but that's not going to happen.
Why did we have to? And
I don't think he deserves that fight, but Max would want that fight for the money, and then why wouldn't the UFC give Conor McGregor a shot at the title that he technically never lost?
Yeah, we just had to drop the C-bomb, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I'm sorry for all the comments. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you should apologize. Let's talk about a fight that there's no possible way you could tie Conor McGregor into. This co-main event, I mean, this is huge.
I'll try.
Please don't. Chris Cyborg.
Who has the same manager as Conor McGregor.
Damn. Damn, you're good. Chris Cyborg, Felicia Spencer. Now, Chris Cyborg, of course, the long-reigning featherweight champion in a number of promotions, and just lost for the first time in something like 15 years. 15 years since her first fight. Her first pro fight was her first loss. There's like a no contest in there somewhere, but otherwise unbeaten, undefeated for years. She loses in that first-round knockout to Amanda Nunes. Some people would say shocking. Some people would say Nunes is just that good. Maybe it was a matter of time.
I thought it was shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. First-round knockout would have been hard to predict. But either way, she's coming off that first loss. First loss in years. Something she hasn't had to deal with in a long time. How do you think she's going to look against Felicia Spencer? Undefeated in her career so far, young fighter, I think only 7 fights in, but has looked pretty sharp so far and totally dominated Megan Anderson, who was someone who everyone wanted to see fight Cyborg for a long time. Now this is Spencer's spot. How do you think Cyborg's going to look?
It's weird when we were at the official weigh-in, she came in at 146, and our cameraman Casey turned around and was like, "The champion missed weight," and I was like,
gosh.
"It's not a championship fight, Casey." He's like, "Oh yeah, wow, that's weird." And then looking back, she hadn't weighed in like 146 since like, I don't know, like 6-7 years ago. Like her first Invicta fight was like a non-title fight, and ever since then, she had a couple 140 catch weights in her first couple UFC fights, but other than that, it's been 145, 145, 145. She's weighing 146, she gets that 1 pound over, and it's only a 3-round fight. So she's very accustomed to 5-round fights. She's very accustomed to weighing at 145 with that 1 pound, and now 3 rounds to work, less. She needs to conserve energy less because she doesn't have to go those 2 extra rounds. I'm very curious how Cyborg's looks because I can't remember I can remember her weighing in, but I can't remember how the fight played out. She obviously won. Yeah. But Felicia Spencer's also very young in her career. Yeah. She doesn't look like she cuts a ton of weight.
And a legit 145er, which has been a problem with some of Cyborg's previous UFC opponents.
A lot of her opponents have been 135ers that have come up. Like actually all of them have pretty much been 135ers that come up. But a lot of people wanted to fight Megan Anderson, like you said about Felicia Spencer. Put an end to those talks and convincingly submitted her in the first round. Should have got a post-fight bonus in that card, but she didn't. If she beats Cyborg and she's talking the talk, she's handled media better than most anyone I've ever seen who's only had 2 fights in the UFC, who's already fighting, who many consider the greatest featherweight ever. She's talking the talk. She's certainly not letting the lights and cameras get to her. If she pulls this out, the UFC could have a superstar. I don't want to say superstar because she's young, but they could have a very marketable person that is very good with the media, very good with fans. You guys are itching for a new face of Canada up here. She could play in how do you say? I don't know how to say Montreal like you, but she's from that same area.
She's from Montreal.
There you go.
She's very much a Floridian though at this point, and there's nothing wrong with that. She still claims she still loves Canada. She's been very proud of Canada, but I don't know if she's quite the super Canadian that our own beloved George St. Pierre was once upon a time. But we would claim her none the same should she succeed, of course.
Yeah. So if she does somehow win, and I think I'm favoring Cyborg obviously because of the past. I think the only I want to see that Amanda Nunes fight. I thought that rematch should have happened right away. But she's now fighting Felicia Spencer, and I expect Cyborg to win. But if Spencer somehow proves me wrong, the UFC, I think, has a legitimate person they could really get behind in Felicia Spencer.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't checked out any of Spencer's interviews, definitely check out.
And she's so endearing. Like watching Embedded, she was just so starstruck seeing Frankie Edgar in the airport. She's like, I want a picture. It's like, I want a picture, but like, how do I do it? And then her it was pretty adorable. Like her fiance or boyfriend like goes, Frankie, can you ask her to get a picture? And Frankie's like, hey, Felicia, got a picture? She's like, yeah, okay, like totally played it off, but she was starstruck.
She's maybe been the breakout star of Embedded, and that's really what Embedded should be for. Is because it's kind of a joke at this point that a lot of the people who have been featured on it more than once, you just kind of see them. Here's me working out, or here's me making a public appearance, and that's still interesting to watch, but not exactly like it's not getting you excited. But when you see a new fighter embracing it for the first time, and embracing being on camera. Like I said, getting to show off her personality. It is only her second UFC fight, so she has to show a lot to people.
I don't think she stopped smiling this week.
She's smiling all the time, so that's great. Maybe the breakout star of Embedded, if she wins on Saturday, could be the breakout star of this week. I do want to talk a little bit about Cyborg's personality as well.
Yeah.
So, some interesting things this week. She did not do an open workout. Instead, she spent 15 minutes.
She didn't even do a Q&A.
Oh, but you know what? She jumped in. She went to the crowd with the fans. She took pictures with everyone. Definitely endeared herself to the people of Edmonton. If they didn't already love Cyborg enough, they definitely loved her after that. But what do you make out of that? This is, I think, as people may know by now, the last fight on her UFC contract.
Yep.
Her and Dana White have not always seen eye to eye. There's definitely a war of words going on.
A little bit of an understatement.
There's definitely, and now a war of words going on in public now that she might have her foot out the door. So what do you think about her behavior this week? Is she fed up with UFC right now?
I think she's just over it at this point. I mean, doing an open workout, doing Q&A is really promoting the UFC and this fight and like getting behind this UFC banner that has been very hesitant to get behind her. I mean, I was at UFC 172 in Baltimore. That was the John Jones Glover Teixeira fight. And now's the scrum. This was back when Dana was doing the scrums. And that's the one, I don't know, I'm sure you guys, everyone remembers when he goes, Cyborg looked like Vanderlei Silva in a dress. And walked around doing this. And I was like, and everyone in the media was like, oh, what are you doing, man? And now they seem to make peace, but now that Cyborg is lost and Dana's like, she doesn't want that fight. She doesn't want that fight. And Cyborg's like, what are you talking about? Of course they want that fight. And they've been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. When she went into the crowd, she handed out a lot of flyers for her after party, for her watch party, for her brand, for her Instagram. So she's putting Cyborg, 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 Cyborg. She gets on stage to do the stare down with Felicia Spencer today, doesn't even look at Dana, doesn't shake Felicia Spencer's hand, just gets there, stares her down with her face paint, and walks away. I think Cyborg's attitude is I'm over it.
Yeah. Now, Jose, you actually spoke to her on media day. What kind of vibe did you get during your interview?
It was a little, I think our interview was a little different. I watched a few of the other ones and she was giving very short, like, oh, have you spoken to Dana? Like, nope, focused on this fight. Oh, have you spoken, like, would you expect if you win, would you sign that one fight contract that Dana White said? Well, I'm really focused on Felicia right now. I'm not really thinking about that. Every single time someone brought up Dana, Amanda, contracts, she'd be like, nope, fight, nope, fight, nope, fight. So I asked her, like, is it annoying getting all these questions? And she's like, it's not hard to get focused. I just really care about the fans, and the fans will decide where I go. So she was dancing around this question, and every question I asked, she'd be like, well, I just love the fans. I just love the fans. So she's very much trying to build this connection with the fans rather than this connection with the UFC.
Yeah, wherever she goes next, the Cyborg brand is growing strong. And I think she might have opened up for you a little bit, Jose. I think it might be the hair. Might be the hair.
I doubt it, but
just
you could be the judge of that.
I don't have any, so.
You could be the judge
I would never
of that.
know. I don't know if that's the key to breaking open some of these interviews. The media day was very enjoyable. Like, we spoke to a lot of good interviews. Check them out on MMA Fighting. These guys have great personalities, and sometimes it just takes a little bit to get them to open up.
And she was. I asked her what her favorite, most memorable fight was. I go, if you had to pick one fight from your career. Now I was expecting like, oh, maybe the Holly fight, maybe like her UFC debut. And she's like, my fight against Shayna Baszler. And where she won.
Now, tell people why that one was memorable.
Because it was her
first. That was at Elite XC.
It was Elite XC. She didn't know any English. So people would like ask her questions. She'd be like, oh, I don't know what to say. And then it was like her first fight in the U.S. I can't remember if it was her first fight in the U.S. or not, but she couldn't speak. It was her first fight in the U.S. She couldn't really speak English. And she like knocked her out and then jumped up and was like celebrating on the cage. But then the ref was like, the fight's not over. I didn't stop. She was like, oh, okay. And then she goes in and then knocks her out again. So she's like, that is the most memorable fight and like the best moment I've had. had. And our cameraman brought it up, Casey, and I was like, well, I remember that fight, but I wasn't expecting her to say that because she's been in so many fights. That was also like, what, her 5th fight ever?
If you guys want to dig that fight up from the dark webs, I don't think it's on Fight Pass or anything like that. Dig that up from the dark webs.
But we have on the clip we put out, Esther Lynn has all those photographs from the Elite XC days where we put the photos of her just like hammering down on
Esther
Shayna.
and Casey did not miss an Elite XC or Strike Force moment.
Did not.
Now, let's talk. Oh, first off, let me just very quickly get your picks for your pick for the main event, your pick for the co-main before we talk about some of the rest of the main cards. So, what do you think, Frankie or Max?
I think Max is going to win, and not easy. I think it's going to be very close. I don't think he's going to blow him out like he did Brian Ortega.
Right.
I just think Max is clicking on all cylinders right now. He's going to be really hungry to erase that loss to Dustin Poirier, and then I'm picking Cyborg against Felicia. 3 rounds at 146. I got to go with Cyborg.
Now, in the rest of the main card, we've got Nico Price versus Jeff Neal, Marc-André Barriault versus Christophe Yotko, and Olivier Aubin-Mercier versus Arman Sarukian. So out of those 3 fights, which one's kind of jumping out at you,
Nico Price
Jose?
and Jeff Neal,
Yeah,
100%.
okay.
Nico Price is killer be killed. He's never lost a decision, but he's lost twice, and it was by submission and knockout. He like decapitated Tim Means.
Yep.
He knocked out Randy Brown off his back.
No
with
one talks
hammer
about
fists,
that anymore. Probably because it made no sense.
It's like, and he was losing that fight to Tim Means, and then he like just deaded him with one punch. He just like crumpled him.
Means was doing what he does to a lot of people. He was like flurrying on him, like, oh, here it comes. Means he's gonna finish him.
And then Nico Price was like, nah, like I'm turning into a floor mat right now. So
Amazing.
he's on. I love watching Nico Price fight. Neil in our interview was another one that stands out. Someone he still serves at a restaurant in Texas, and he's like, I'm gonna keep serving until I can find more income outside of the UFC.
Are you someone who sends back orders and complains about your orders sometimes? Because I don't think you would if Jeff Neal was your
No, I'm
server.
pretty mellow guy. I just get what comes to me.
Okay, me too. But it's probably because of people like Jeff Neal.
Imagine cutting weight working at a restaurant.
Well, someone said like it's hot. You know, at least it's depending where he
Yeah,
works.
I
maybe
said
it's
that,
hot.
but like he's a server, so he has to be around the food.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
But yeah, that's almost guaranteed to be a banger. Let's not hope there's the Lewis and Ngannou curse falls upon this fight. But I have to say it. I don't believe in jinxes. There's no such thing. Also on the main card, though, a couple of key Canadians I mentioned, Aubin-Mercier and Barriault, who are kind of in similar positions. They really need to win these fights. Aubin-Mercier going up against a blue chip prospect, Arman Sarukian, and if he loses, it'll be his 3rd straight loss. He was a really big prospect coming out of Ultimate Fighter Nations. He was a finalist. He didn't win, but he was a finalist. He trains with GSP, so he had the whole pedigree, and the results were good at first. Now he's kind of hit a slump. We'll see how he bounces back.
I actually heard, going off of Olivier Aubin-Mercier, that he had hired like someone to do a scouting report on his opponent and a scouting report on him, and not like so that he like had someone break down a film and say like, this is what I'm noticing that you do wrong, and what your opponent would do, how your opponent would take advantage of that. So you don't see that. You don't see scouting report a lot.
The Canadian gangster doesn't play around. And did you see the book? He was reading some book called like Sapien or something.
Yeah, I don't.
Which I assume was some treatise on the human condition, which I would say most pro athletes probably aren't into that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't speak
French.
French. I don't speak French, so I couldn't tell you what it was. But
I'm just guessing.
He was well dressed.
And Esther has a great picture of him that's out there. He's looking very sophisticated.
Sure.
So he doesn't mess around. I totally believe he would hire someone to analyze the data for him or what have you. And then Barriault was a former 2-division TKO champion before making his debut at UFC Ottawa earlier this year. And his debut did not quite go his way. He's in danger of falling to 0-2 against a seasoned veteran in Yotko. I think Barriault can pull it off, but again, there was a lot of hype coming in. There's constant doubts now. If he goes 0-2, not sure how many extra chances he gets. So yeah, 2 Canadians on the main card facing some dire circumstances. So look out for that. I had it before that, the preliminaries. We've got 6 preliminaries.
Something like that.
6 preliminary fights, 2 early prelims, 4 prelims. What do you like, Jose, on the
I
preliminaries?
love Hakeem Dawodu or Hakeem Dawodu. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name. I've heard both. Who's he fighting?
He's fighting Yoshinori Horie.
Whoever Hakeem Dawodu fights, I'm gonna watch. I think he's one of the most technically sound strikers in all of MMA. He came in with a lot of hype from World Series of Fighting. I think he was undefeated coming into the UFC. Dropped his first UFC fight, submission, but that was over in London. It was really fast, and then he came back with back-to-back like masterpiece. I think one of those is Kyle Bochniak. Was that his last fight?
It was a split, but I think the scoring may have been a little screwy.
Yeah, and I love watching. I love elite level striking. Like I'll watch him hit pads all day.
Yes.
And I just want to see him do his thing. Was the last person away, and there might have been some trickery with the towel, with his hands on the towel, but he made weight.
I didn't say anything. Look, he's Alberta's own. I would never say a bad word about Hakeem in his own home province. So he needed the towel. A lot of people do. It's not a crime. I think a lot of people are earmarking this one as a prelim fight that could steal the show. Alexandre Pantoja and Davison Figueiredo. You know, we could say this about so many flyweight fights that have happened. Why is this not in the main card? Why is it not being showcased? It's awesome that it's on ESPN. I know that's a lot of exposure. That's great. But I still feel like, even though the flyweight division has been saved, thank you, Henry Cejudo, that they're still not treating it seriously or something that they could really make money off of.
This is what, 3 versus 4? Or 4 versus 5 or something
they're
like
both
that?
in the top 5.
Yeah.
Figueiredo just lost. He's 15-1. He just lost to Formiga. There's no shame in that.
No.
And Pantoja's just been knocking everybody off.
So yeah, that's it's the winner of that probably isn't getting a title shot anytime soon with José Benavidez waiting there, but it's basically that fight is a placeholder. Whoever wins will keep their place in line for a title shot if that title shot ever comes. So yeah, that's another banger. And Alexis Davies is on the card too. People aren't talking about that.
And well, I mean, she's got a tough fight. She's fighting Viviana Araujo, who's dropping down from 135. She got a knockout in her UFC debut in a bantamweight bout. She's making her flyweight debut, so there's a lot of expectations for her. But Davis is a veteran, back-to-back losses, but she's lost to high-quality fighters. She's beaten some high-quality fighters. Liz Carmouche is on there.
Yeah.
Sarah Kaufman,
who's now fighting for the championship.
Yeah. Sarah Kaufman, their third fight, she finally won after losing to Kaufman twice up in the regional scene. So that's an intriguing fight. It's an underrated card. I see some people poo-pooing the card, but I think it's, like I said, it's underrated. It's in a beautiful location. Cannot praise Edmonton enough. Edmonton, thank you, Edmonton. You've been a great host this week.
You just spell bathroom like washroom, and you're wrong.
He'll get used to it. Trust me. He'll take that back to the U.S. So I think there's a lot to look forward to this weekend, Jose. I know some people are saying the card seems a little thin, and I understand that. So I won't complain. But card looks all right. Our coverage, I think, has certainly been top-notch. No complaints there. Please stick to our YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Why wouldn't you? Keep checking out MMAfighting.com. Check us out on Twitter.
At MMA Fighting.
And Instagram.
At MMA Fighting, DOTCOM.
And keep following along with us. Me, Alexander K. Lee, and this, Jose Youngs. And we're out.
The bad boy.